Now, some of you may be wondering, Booster 1? Didn't we have a first set with a 1 in it? Well, yes, we did. This is one of those weird early installment features that the first series had two core sets being released simultaneously. The volumes were released into card and game shops around Japan. Meanwhile, these boosters were found in Bandai's Cardos machines. First introduced in 1988 for Saint Seiya cards, it would go on to house numerous cards for popular anime. It was meant to be kind of a way that kids could share information based off of Amadas systems that gathered weather data. This was how Bandai distributed cards for their version of the game, but when Konami began making their own version of the game, this was how they were distributed. So now the prideful duel of truth begins now. This was an actual tagline used for a set that is, quite frankly, shockingly underwhelming. It's kind of hard to say that this is one of the worst sets since, it's only the second set and we only really have 40 cards before this. But Booster 1 is primarily just vanilla monsters that are not even creeping on the Volume 1 trio or Dark Magician, Gaia, or Canon. So let's look at the 40 cards of Booster 1. Let's get the best cards of the set out of the way first. Ryukishin or Gargoyle of Seto Kaiba fame, mostly because I kept seeing him in the reverse campaign of Legacy of the Duelist. Seriously, difficulty was not so well balanced. This elusive creature makes you think it's a stone creature before attacking from the darkness and then quickly running away. Clearly, they are not the fastest creatures, as their measly 500 defense means they can be killed quite quickly. After that, the other notable monster of the set was Watt Kid, which continues the trend of thunder monsters being plural with Elect Kids, a monster you shouldn't underestimate because of his strong electrical attacks. I mean, as long as you're not the Power Trio, Dark Magician, Gaia the Fierce Knight, or Canon the Swords Mistress. And yeah, that's it. That is the peak power of Booster 1. 1,000 attack, they don't even have equipped cards, so they are, I guess, a decent replacement to some filler monsters that you have in your deck if you are not a super rich kid who can afford the most powerful cards. But is that really worth paying money for these sets? Just ask yourself, why more or less spend money at these Cardos machines when you can get Volume 1 to potentially get Dark Magician, Gaia, or the 1200 attack monsters? Now on to the rest. So, first up is the man-eating plant. This human-sized Venus flytrap looks pretty but will attack when approached. Okay, I'm not going to be one of those people to critique beauty. I don't really think I know what beauty standards are by this point, but I say this plant's about a 6 out of 10. A Joey special is up next. Battle Warrior fights with his bare hands. Well, at least it is straight to the point. Japan has a bit more complex name with the Grappling Warrior Ultimator, who they want you to know doesn't fight with weapons. I mean, I guess you can count Brass or Iron Knuckles as weapons. This is a power creep regarding the defense monsters, but even still, we'll get a major jump in power in about a few weeks. So what exactly are attached to these wings of Wicked Flame? Is it a worm? Salamander? This looks like a root. But it is a lethal creature whose wings of crimson fire are very dangerous to the touch. If you are weaker than it, then that is true, but otherwise, I guess it doesn't really matter. Yet another weird monster in that era of stuff that sounds like effects and or field spells, but since they don't exist yet, it's just a normal monster. Graveyard in the Hand of Invitation is known as the Beckoning Graveyard, claims to be a power source for zombies. Again, sounds like a field spell, but it's just a middling zombie monster that gets a buff from the Violet Crystal. Nothing particularly special. Nightmare Scorpion is a two-pronged threat. Not only does it cause you to have nightmares, but then uses its 4 stinger tails to poison you to death. Yeah, you think you're dead after one of them, and the second one stings you, and then followed by another sting, and then the last sting, and that definitely kills you. It's not bad, it's just under 1,000 attack points, but lacking an equipped card does kind of hurt it. That also goes for the Yamatano Dragon Scroll, which summons a dragon to attack despite poor defenses. Yep, those are some truly poor defenses. But again, it's another issue of, this might have been okay, but without an equip card, it's mostly beat out by warriors and anything else that has higher attack points. Nifty look to it though, I do kind of like the look of it. Sally the Dark Plant is quite the oxymoron. Drawing upon the powers of pollutants and dark forces, it sadly forgets as a flower it needs sun. Even see that it's already on its way out as its eyes are rolling into its head. Though then again, it could be. Before clown control, before hand control, chaos control, there was weather control. Rather than a strategy revolving around weather-based cards, we just have a singular card that causes the weather on the map to be quite tumultuous. Though it appears the guy has to leave his cloud base from the sun. Whose idea was it to make the controller of all weather a snowman? Our next card, rather than showing our monster being cool, rather show what will end up happening to you when it attacks. The mystical capture chain, or holy chain, binds the enemies, making them older. I was honestly curious what a potential 3D model from those PS2 games would be, and not really knowing what I was expecting, but wasn't this. Jin, the Watcher of the Wind, is no legend, to be sure. With a paltry attack stat that is better to be used to defend, blowing away foes before they attack. But it really isn't much, honestly. Kind of like a small gust of wind. Old category, something that sounds a lot more powerful than it actually is. The shadow who controls the darkness can effectively paralyze you. You know, as long as you are weaker than 800 attack. Then you're fine. Just flashlight and get rid of him. Just, you would think that it was a lot stronger being a controller of darkness. It's just only really the darkness for children. Speaking of shadows, the melting red shadow will melt before your eyes and then appear below you for a surprise attack. Kinda weird that it isn't like the melting red blood monster because it sort of looks like it. Also, it could just appear underneath you, sending you flying, or does it like eat you up like shadows. Can't really think of what this does to a monster, like I can imagine some things, but this is just one of those instances with this one. You'd have to be underneath it. Digbeak. What it really called, what it has a beak, more like a snout, since as it curls its snake-like body, it attacks with the beak. I call it more a headbutt rather than that, though maybe it still hurts. You're still getting headbutted by a bird snake. Some of the most feared and iconic cards of early Yu-Gi-Oh! Are the Jar cards. Whether it be Morphing Jar, Fiber Jar, they all had appeared on limited or forbidden lists. That being said, the first ever jar was nothing special. Ancient Jar is fragile, but contains something dangerous. If you're a rather weak monster, I guess it rolls over you or eats you, maybe a little Cyclops. Quite the simple beginning for such a feared archetype from the early days of the game. For us TCG players. Hurricane, a tornado. After all, hurricanes are just tornadoes of the ocean. But this one wonders wilderness, cutting its opponents to the edge. Though it's probably an F1 tornado with how tiny it is. Though I keep forgetting that at this point, in terms of small, it's a lot weaker than what I'm usually used to. So 900 is sort of powerful for the era. So first we had some kind of stick attached to flaming wings. Now we have an eye attached to flaming wings. The rather aptly named Fire Eye. Rather than just heat being the problem, instead the blast of heat from said wings is that causes the problem. This somehow makes it the superior monster, and in this situation somehow at 100 more attack points. Phantom Duan, or Saturner, is person in creepy cloak number, let's see here, how many of those do we have in volume 1? Just insert number of creepy cloak figures that is a spellcaster. This one paralyzes its opponents so they can't move, which I guess goes for the heart, because how do you kill like this? I guess it goes up and smashes you. You know, I don't get it. Holy Power! I'm sorry, this is just a lucky trinket. Again, religion does not exist in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the States. is a frail creature protected by a just as frail and weak holy/mystical force. Though I guess that there is something worth noting is the amount of monsters that have higher defense. Doesn't really matter since at this point people would be rolling around with Dark Magicians and Gaias, but being the richest kid in Japan to have a full playset might have been impossible. And as if to continue the removal of references to religion, Hellgate Dig. Can you guess what is not in the name for the TCG? Within the belly of this beast is a portal to the underworld, swimming with reinforcements. Unfortunately for him, it's not ill blood for another few years, so it's a lesser beast fake since it's technically a beast. Like, really? Not a zombie, not a fiend. Literally, either of those would fit a million times better than a beast. Fear not, Yugi boomers. It's not Synchro, it's Synkar. Art failings if you live in Japan. Or just dark gray and all but art in name. Same type, same attack and defense. I guess if you didn't get dark gray and don't want to go buy volume 1, you instead have this guy spitting laser beams at your opponent. Now shoot for the mount, he is literally spitting laser beams. Doron, or Drone, was a card that feels like it was made for a joke years later. So it has the same katakana for draw. Sadly, this warrior is a few years ahead of his time. Years later, he could special summon another copy of himself, and you'd have to buy their attacks to become 1800 if they're both on the field. Instead, it's another decent for the time warrior if you don't have cannon or lacking Gaia. Look! Underneath us! It's a mech! It's a mole! No! It's Mech Ball Zombie! Or a lump zombie. Because in Japan it's a zombie lump. Just amalgamations of things that I guess were cool to Japanese children. Because it also attacks with Walker Punches, which... okay, that is kind of cool. Next up, we had the Petite Angel's cousin, Happy Lover, who kills you by making you super happy. Oh, don't believe me? It has much higher attack than defense. It's going for your blood. Look at that smile, those eyes, its heart rates. He wants you to be so happy that you'll keel over and die. Ghosts, or phantom ghosts. Yes, because we need to know that this guy is not only a phantom, but a ghost. No, it's not just one ghost, rather it's multiple restless souls, so why is it not just called ghosts? I mean, we've already had elect kids, don't know why this one needs to be special. Like, why is it that the things that look like one thing get the plural treatment, but this gets the singular treatment? Like, I could see that it's multiple ghosts in this card artwork. You could have literally done that. So, let's talk about the TCG for a moment. Some monsters end up getting the number 1 or number 2 after its name. I bring this up because of its weird consistency thing. Sometimes there are monsters that do look similar, like the Synkar and the Pale Beast, but it's not like we have Pale Beast number 1 or 2, but it's stuff like the Flying Kamakiris, which don't look similar to one another. Here's the first example we are talking about, with the Twin Long Roads number 1, which, are you ready for its OC Japanese name? You're not gonna believe it. He's called Grouse. Just Grouse. I mean, I guess it's right about it. Though what I did figure out was this is actually a fan-made card. Created for the original Duel Monsters Game Boy title, which actually includes some previously mentioned monsters, like Darkshade and Doron. Which, I don't know if your creator calling you Grouse is a good thing or bad thing. Next up, we have Droll. Hang on. Not that Droll. This Droll bird. Though in Japan it's not a Droll bird, it's rather... speak. Who uses a combination of its beak and loud voice to stun your enemies. Okay, it's really not helping its case with the phrase stun. Another card involving Droll stunned your ability to search your deck. Really not helping with the trauma here. Yeah. But, hey, in Japan, its beak and voice rather surprise the most timid of opponents. Can it be courageous? With attack, it may not be the case, so, yeah, mostly timid. Let's just move on. Midnight Findle, or The End. Apparently a level 2 monster requires a tribute, but specifically a tribute that takes place at midnight on Friday the 13th, on a full moon, when all the planets have aligned and the blood you are using is a version that has given birth to a baby that has RH null blood. That would have made it more interesting, but we just have another box standard 800-600 spread. I was just trying to make this yellow card feel somewhat more interesting. And it really isn't going to be that much interesting since we have Discount Cannon, Vishwar Randy. This monster for the Dark Forces enjoys making a bloodbath out of her opponents, which seems quite likely with all of those hands. Almost thought this was like some kind of gender-bent version or Avatar Vishnu based on the name, but I guess not. Anyway, as stated, Discounted Cannon, Warrior, less attack. Guess if you didn't have it at the event, it's alright, but if you really need a warrior, there's other options, and not in that way. Water element, that, let's just go with the TCG artwork. I know it's a small thing, but YouTube can be quite finicky. But hey, I think this might be the best Yugioh of power replication with its not here to deprive people of their vision. So I guess they are attacking themselves like with the petite angel. You could have brought up drowning, though I guess the Poseidon monster does the drowning. The embryonic beast, or immature devil, has probably some of the meanest flavor text I think I've seen up to this point. Like, it's not even trying to be nice. Nice what it do. It calls it ugly. Like, this has so far been quite likely the meanest set of text for some of these monsters. I mean, one's that called gross and now ugly. I mean, come on, that vortex well, I could suck in a few hits before its board vanishes forever. And we have reached the last monster. Yeah, nothing's really stood out, so you might have lost track, but we have the Wicked Dragon with the Ursat's head. It's demon. We have the Forgotten Twin-Headed Dragon that time forgot, shredding apart its foes. So, like, is the dragon the lower creature, or is that devil? Because the top monster looks like a dragon, but I know a drake like dragons. So is that the case? I mean, maybe the devil's lower one has the devil look, though since it's an Ursat's, maybe they both can be either the dragon or devil. Aside from that, the spell cards are nothing particularly interesting. They reprinted the equip cards from Volume 1 here, even though it's only been out for like a few weeks, and there's really nothing else to buy. And then slightly stronger red medicine and sparks and blue medicine and Rime. And that's Booster 1. Yeah, that was definitely a sophomore slump if I've ever heard it, but I guess with Booster 1, you can just say it's a uninteresting start. But don't worry, because something far more interesting is in our future. See you for the starter box.